Big Red Couch, the podcast about making role-playing games. A group of GMs and players draw ideas from the mystery box and bring their game pitches to you, in which our heroes draw a card.
Time for another crazy idea drawing.
Alright, yes. Let us draw the crazy idea. Whose turn is it?
I think it's mine.
Fair enough.
Because selfishness.
I shall do the ceremonial removal of the cards that we've already read.
The crumple zone, as we refer to it.
Okay. The cards are removed.
The box is shriveled.
Noisily.
Cranial motion has been applied.
Attempt not to take the one right on the top. Something from the middle, I think. Can't see what I'm doing, but here we go. Here comes yet. No. Food court wars.
I think this one may be my fault.
Yeah, I'm going to blame you anyway, though.
Probably. It's your handwriting, not that that means anything.
Okay, so Food Court Wars.
That's our next idea.
Alright. See you all next time.
Some days later...
Oh, it's me, is it? Okay.
And somebody else can be.
We need, some straws or something to pick whoever's doing the introductions, because we'd never get that bit organised in time.
Well, I've been doing it, so I'm kind of leaving space for somebody else to take over should they wish to.
Yes, but you've got that whole BBC radio voice.
Bollocks, I do.
Tell me, can you do posh? Can I do posh? I went to the Royal Academy of Fucking Arts, mate.
Okay, I shall do the thing then, shall I?
Okay.
Welcome to the Big Red Couch. Sitting on the couches tonight, we have...
Ben.
Craig.
Kev.
And Tonya. You've probably just listened to us drawing the card for Food Court Wars, so shall we get on with this, bollocks?
Fair enough. I know I've done a huge amount of research for this one, so would anybody else like to leap in first?
No, that was you volunteering, right then.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
With your lies.
Indeed. Your filthy, filthy lies.
And making Grumpy Cat Face really isn't going to get you out of this.
Plus, the whole concept is your fault, so...
Bollocks. Alright. Was it really my... Oh god, you're right, it was. Okay, so, Food Court Wars. I decided to go in a changeling direction with this one.
Ooh.
Concentrating on the court aspect of things. So you've got the summer court and the winter court.
Are they both run out at the food court at the bottom of Queen Street where the Deco used to be?
I think they're two different food courts.
Okay.
I think what you've got are the two food courts, which are essentially where the summer and winter courts of the city are based. I would be riffing really heavily on the disparity between somebody's position in changeling society and where their position in mundane. I wanted to use the word secular, but that really doesn't work very well.
Wow.
Let's go with mundane.
Mundane. Let's go.
I think the technical term is banal.
Banal, yes. Banal society.
Or banal,
Okay.
as I've heard it pronounced.
Banal?
Banal.
Really?
Yeah.
Isn't that a sex move by that guy in the third Batman film?
Ooh. You do not need to do the sugar switch out and say something that horrible.
Fine, so noted.
Put your pants back on.
No. Okay, so, yeah, the idea being that you've got the two courts, essentially based in food courts, because, the king of the city, or duke, or whatever you go with, is of enormous power in changeling society. From the point of view of banal society, he's this homeless guy who sits in the corner of the food court. And the people of the food court feel sorry for him.
I see.
And give him food. If you're looking at the place with the right kind of eyes, it's not just a food court. It's this enormous hall. It's richly decorated.
And his chair in the corner is in fact a sumptuous dais with a really special chair.
Indeed.
And his supplicants bring him offerings.
Indeed. It's all in how you view the world.
Okay. See, I thought you were going to go with it turns out the king of the city washes dishes behind Zap 3 or something. I don't know.
I thought about that, but the idea of really playing on the disparity between mundane and Fae social position kind of appealed.
Okay.
So, yeah, you've almost got a complete reversal of things. You might get some vague business type who comes in, who occasionally chats to harmless old homeless Eddie over there, and it could be that he has absolutely no idea that this is the king of the winter court, or it could be that this is a fairly low-level changeling type.
Who is bringing something to the attention of the king.
Yeah. So, yeah, what I'd play on that one is that social difference, and on the animosity between the courts, and the fact that they're probably never going to strike at each other directly.
Okay, so you have the unseelie food court and the seelie food court.
Yeah, summer and winter courts, the actual transfer of authority and ruling from one to the other as seasons go. So the temptation to put it in a city which has a wide disparity in seasons, say Chicago or anywhere north, just so that you can have people people coming in from the snow and ice outside into this nice warm food court that, with the right kind of eyes, has got this big fire warming the place up and that kind of thing.
Okay.
That's where I went with it.
I'd be tempted to put them at the two courts in the same mall.
Oh, nice.
Just to make it a really identifiable piece of territory that they're competing over. It might make it a bit more squalid and small in scale, but yeah.
It was a big enough mall.
Yeah,
If you had one of those ones that sort of stretches, it's kind of a mall that grew. So you've got the original food court, and then the mall grew, and they kind of built an extension out over the intersection into the next block. And that'd be kind of cool, because then you've potentially got a meeting spot on the bridge between the two blocks, which, now that I think of it, is really Night Watch.
Not necessarily, particularly if the bridge in question has shops on it. So, I don't know, meeting at the intersection of Bed Bath & Beyond and a bookshop or something.
We'll meet at the appointed time beside the seller of cell phone cases and the gelato stand.
Makes sense.
Actually, Night Watch, Day Watch sort of thing would be pretty cool too.
Yeah.
Yes, he is accused of travelling further than the threats allowed him, without flying a flag of truce.
You could do some... Actually, I think keeping it small is probably a good thing, because doing large things, it's easier to have a huge consequence in a world that is bounded by the Northwest Car Park and the Southeast Car Park.
Oh, okay, so possibly the courts aren't the court of the entire city, they're just...
The courts of the mall.
Dude.
Or it's possible they are the courts of the entire city. It's just that royalty being what it is, the royals never leave the food court.
Yeah, this is their world, pretty
They'll
much.
never leave the mall.
And as far as Faerie's concerned, that's good enough. That's all that's significant in this situation.
Which works especially if you go with that social disparity. So somebody looking from the outside is going to wonder how it is that homeless Eddie gets in there every day and never realises that that big bruiser of a security guard who ducks through doorways that are far
Actually,
too
a foot
tall
tall.
for him is showing him down to this break room that nobody ever uses.
Yeah, because the big bruiser is a troll.
The big bruiser is a troll, and everybody knows that's High King Edward's private chambers.
Makes sense.
So what sort of scenarios would you set there? Would you set the characters up as sort of like new inductees, or...?
I think that would be one, especially if you go with the sort of the court microcosm. I think I'd have to go sort of political, a little bit political and Machiavellian. So you'd want a system that kind of rewarded that. I mean, it would be fun to have the occasional all-out, after-hours running sword battles through the food court. Sort of vaulting nimbly over the gelato stand and diving past the sellers of god-awful cheap jewellery. A certain amount of political manoeuvring and that kind of thing would seem to work.
Okay.
I think there's all sorts of things you could do with it, because if you have it as the food courts are the centre pieces of each court, that everything that happens there. And sure, there's other places in the city that are technically ruled by these courts, except they're not at court, so nobody cares as much as they probably should. I was thinking that if you've got different kind of outlet stores in the mall, that have different lines of fealty to things, so that you've got mall trolleys, and you've got trolley wranglers who collect the trolleys. Except different bands of trolley wranglers to different shops then try to compete to bring more of the trolleys back to their store to limit resources going to the enemy. And just this whole thing just playing out in kind of a mall context, so that you've got this endless kind of growling, backbiting thing.
So you have Fae trolley boys counting coup and in heads of trolley.
Yes, and rustling. and
The staff of various big box stores kind of dividing down noble house lines and that sort of thing.
Ooh, I like it.
Yeah, they're not going to be the House of Gucci, but they may as well be the House of Gucci.
you have this whole context going on, but, for a longer-term campaign, you could throw in all sorts of spanners in the works. Like, this is an outlet mall or a thing that's grown up for people familiar with Auckland. You've got 277 in Broadway or something. It's there, it's a mall, it's a context. And then another mall turns up nearby. Or there's something else happens that changes in the environment. What does that mean?
Somebody decides to open up an IMAX theatre complex. Whose territory is that?
Yes.
Let's fight it out.
At which point you have the various kings jockeying for support from Lord's Walmart and Best Buy. Actually, the idea of sending tribute to Lady Best Buy to see if...
They're never calling her that.
But never calling her that.
Actually, that would be a good one. If you had a situation where you've got this local mall with connections to local stores and things that's set up, and it has a conflict between the winter court and the summer court, and then a Walmart turns up in town.
Ah, the common enemy.
Well, yes, but it may have its own kings, its own courts. from somewhere else, and so you've got this whole kind of chain imperialism coming in, and that wouldn't be a bad blur. With 2 courts in the city, the conflict was endless. Now there are 4.
Oof. Brace yourself.
That sounds
Sale
like
season is coming.
Ooh.
What was that?
Brace yourself. Sales season is coming.
Yeah.
That sounds like it could be an interesting, long-running,
Oh, yeah.
capped campaign, possibly a LARP.
Yeah, I don't think it'd be worth doing as a one-off convention or even game day thing. I think it would take too long to get the setting across to be worth it.
You'd want to do it long enough that there was a lot of invested stuff that people cared about in the 2-court campaign. You'd want to have people who everyone loved to hate or who actually were quite invested in, and so that you could have this whole very reluctant, do we band together or what? Or do we just pretend to band together, and then when the moment is right, we strike? Say both sides at once. In this case, it would be, nobody tells 2 different packs of wolves to betray each other simultaneously. It just happens that way. You'd want to localize it before switching things up, so it couldn't be a short game.
Cool.
So, who's next? I am being pointed at. I have brought my doom upon myself.
Well, you were saying that's how you indicate personal pronouns in New Zealand Sign.
Yeah, we're learning sign. It's awesome.
It's
So
also
if we go
very
silent,
creepy. They're flashing gang signs at each other in the lounge.
yeah, that's totally what's happening. Anyway, the idea that finally came to mind, there was like 2 weeks there where I was caught with the image of the food court where you have these little, effectively hole-in-the-wall stalls next to each other, and no particular one can sell more than 10 dishes. So they've got their 10 little boxes next to each other, and you have tables set up in like a gutter between the 2 lines of stores. And the idea of people taking their food, turning around to find a table, and there being this flurry of cutlery backwards and forwards between the 2 lines of stalls. And that was all I had. Then there was a conversation that Craig brought up about a spaceship that is so big that it doesn't really need to do anything, but the folk who live there like to go places. And I remember there being this phrase, firing beanstalk. You have this thing come into orbit, fire a beanstalk to tether itself to the planet so that they can trade, do whatever. So you have this edifice that is the depth of the atmosphere, effectively. Maybe a little more, that has room for people to move in from the bottom or from the top. And it occurred to me, once the big spaceship goes away, you still have this edifice, and you still have a spaceport at the top and a planet at the bottom. So those are going to be the choicest areas for food courts to be, businesses in general, but food courts in particular. So if you've got this set up so that there's little tiny docks all the way up and down the beanstalk for ships to come in and open for business, then you could have people jockeying for position close to one of the ends. You could have these little, either you could have it on that was a low-flying plane. Okay, so you've got this beanstalk with a spaceport at one end and a planet at the bottom, which is where the richest business opportunities are going to be. You've got all these little docks up and down the beanstalk, but you don't want to be caught in the middle because then the customers have to walk a really long way to get to you. So you're going to be fighting to get your either little collection of food stalls or possibly large restaurant to dock closer to the end than the guy next to you. So I'm imagining that in Food Court Wars you might have 2 groups of players playing on different days in a week, but they're actually playing in the same game.
Mm-hmm.
And they have, each one of them have a ship that has a variety of little family food businesses, and the idea is that they are jockeying for position to get as close as possible to probably the space end of this beanstalk.
Interesting.
That's what I've got. I don't have a system. I don't have specifics.
As a setting goes, I don't recall specific numbers, but beanstalks are shockingly large structures. And
which is why you have multiple food courts.
Oh, the idea of having movable feasts, as it were, makes perfect sense if someone is effectively undertaking a pilgrimage from one end to the other.
Mm-hmm.
And basically timing yourself with waves of pilgrims so that you go, right, we're here in time for the breakfast rush. We'll just skip up a couple of 100 stories and meet them for dinner as well.
Nice.
Ooh, okay. So you're in fact racing to be in position for that pilgrimage.
They'll be travelling in
lift there.
They'll be travelling in waves, and presumably near the start of their pilgrimage, they'll have taken some provisions.
Mm-hmm.
So the idea that you can keep pace with them, it kind of suggests an oddly an asymmetrically backslid kind of situation, because some people have vehicles capable of operating in an atmosphere and docking on this magical space-tastic beanstalk.
Mm-hmm.
And some folks are hoofing it. So it's like, that's a little bit weird.
I'm imagining everything from people who are too poor to afford anything but shoes, right the way up to people who can afford the lift. So they're riding up in style. Or, I don't know.
Even a lift.
Actually, pedalo tuk-tuks all the way up. Ooh, that would be awesome. I'm imagining this long spiralling walkway.
I can just imagine it's a civilization of people with giant calf muscles.
Certainly by the time they got to the top, they'd be... Yeah.
I was just thinking that if we've got these waves, then it's not just going to be competition between food courts, it's going to be competition for particular waves of pilgrims if they're from a more well-off region or something, so that you're going to get these mobs of vendors basically being remoras to the schools of pilgrims and trying to follow them along and keep pace and drive away other less us vendors.
Okay, so you're driving off hordes of mobile tea shops, while at the same time jockeying to be close to the spaceport.
Well, if you've got sort of, you happen to know that there is a wave of grabbing from poorly remembered Catholic history here. If you know that there is a wave of Benedictine pilgrims, they're going to be the prime spenders, whereas, what's the next one? Franciscans. Oh, to hell with that. We'll swing by, but... realistically, they're going to be filling up on the breadsticks and water and being on their way.
You just want to hold out some Carmelites.
That would be kind of interesting, yeah.
Yeah.
But you're right, you do have a very odd society where there is... I mean, it's not just a beanstalk, there's an actual physical pressurized structure stretching tens of thousands of kilometres above the surface.
Yep.
At that stage, the only conceivable reason to ascend it in a fashion that means that you have to stop occasionally for food is to say that you have done that. That's the best reason I can think of.
It's adventure tourism or walking to Jerusalem, yeah. Well, I mean, there was...
Anyone who can afford a hotel, for instance, has gotten into a hotel at the bottom and woken up at the top.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, having a lift would still take a hell of a long time.
Yeah.
But so you might as well get one that's got room service.
Yes, I will, because the walking to orbit thing was a thread on RPGNet.
I have so got to get myself a sign off for that.
I have been unable to find that thread, and the search function doesn't work anymore.
Right.
They filled it up?
As I understand it, it's more the case that every time they try to activate the search function, it causes the forums to crash. They're not sure why, they don't know how to fix it, so it's just, we don't use the search function anymore because it doesn't work, and neither does anything else.
We don't
It is going feral, so we will beat it with sticks and turn it off.
We don't go to Ravenholm anymore.
Pretty much. But yes, I think the numbers that somebody worked out, based on vertical distance and working out, sort of doing comparisons of stair climbing races versus horizontal running races, their suggestion was that it would probably take somebody 10 years to walk that distance.
Okay.
So that's a lot of restaurant stops.
It is a lot of restaurant stops.
The idea makes me think of Dune. There's something about that, the scale and slight ridiculousness of the endeavour. It's the kind of science fiction world that it reminds me of.
The culture and majesty.
I guess
I kind of imagine people working their way up, taking jobs schlepping boxes from ship to ship, business to business, or taking jobs sweeping a kilometre of corridor while they're on the way.
I was kind of thinking that as vendors, you've kind of got two different options as a way to go. You've got the option where you sell a consistent set of wares, and you are the such and such vendor known from everywhere as being on level such and such of the beanstalk, and you sell stuff that is available nowhere else because you make it and you're only here. And then you've got other people who you would probably see as flighty and crap, who try to do a little bit of pre-research of what is this band of people like? We have always made the best of those. Yes!
Take this coupon and talk to my uncle on level. Whereabouts did you think you were going to be in about?
Yes.
In about a week.
Genuine New York Bay gals. Yes.
We totally have those.
Bagels, yes.
No.
Bagels.
Bagels.
Yeah. We don't have those. We've got some donuts. We'll just dip them in shoe shine. Nobody will ever know.
Is it bad that I am already thinking that someone is going to open a inexpensive, hard-wearing, but totally chipped shoe franchise at the bottom and track their customers all the way to the top?
I like your style. That would be awesome.
I think they'd sell the information on where those customers are
Even better.
and monitor wear patterns so that they can be there for the next pair of shoes.
Oh,
I thought of another option. Along with those shady people, you've got the even shadier people at the base of the beanstalk who surreptitiously sell items that make it look as though you've walked all the way to the top and back, but you haven't actually had to.
Pre-worn pilgrimage shoes.
Yes.
I think it depends entirely on why you're climbing the beanstalk.
Yeah.
If you're doing it to say you've done it because pilgrimage, that's one thing. If you're doing it to get to the top so you can climb on a ship and get off this shitty planet,
that's the other extremely good reason. Maybe the Earth's atmosphere is prone to catching fire in this age. So extra orbital activity is cool, but don't take off from the surface, guys. Maybe that is a reason. People might have to feel like leaving, and sure, go for it.
There's another possibility. If you've got this orbital elevator structure, what if, over time, the lift broke?
okay, so the lift broke. If there was ever a travelator, it isn't anymore.
Yeah. What you've got is the structure. It's not going anywhere. It's self-supporting. The atmosphere stuff all works. That's not a problem. It's just it still works as a spaceport. It's just that the technology or the ability to repair the elevator mechanism is beyond them.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Well, somebody at the top just may have the master key.
Nasty.
Hey, it's just like pulling up a drawbridge.
It's kind of skeevy merchant, the role-playing game, is a direction that we all seem to have gone with this one.
See, I was initially thinking something much smaller scope and wackier.
I like the small scope and wacky thing.
Wacky races kind of shitting on each other, you rat fucker, kind of.
You could make a board game out of it.
I like the
Yeah.
tuk-tuk thing.
Racing.
Take turns peddling the tuk-tuk all the way up.
Racing tuk-tuks around the, not quite, but feels like it, endless spiral it is. Especially if they've got sort of inductive charging things in the floor. Because then if you can get your angle just right on the steering, you can put a brick on the accelerator and go do something else while it just spirals its way up. That's kind of fun. Yeah, it's a certain amount of wacky racers and...
Yeah, and something happens so that you get to move up in the queue to be closer. Your opponents decide to unbolt the lumber merchant in the middle of the night. Just leave them floating 20 metres away from the beanstalk. But hey, their dog's free.
I do a very brief mental image of, one of these pristine white and orange safety light kind of airlock things, and all hard edges and so forth, and so like a whoop whoop bang, all the shutters come up. There's a bunch of heated trays and people behind registers there.
Yep.
That is kind of appealing image. It's like,
Yes. Whoop whoop bang. Bang Marie.
yep.
Yeah.
Whereas
Sorry.
I just had the image based on a Gordon Ramsay show we were watching last night of you've got that kind of heavy sales environment inside the beanstalk, but also outside the beanstalk between ships you've basically got these mostly airtight tubs with a docking clamp at one side, just wandering up the ships, broadcasting all spectrums about noodles or something. You flag them down, they'll come and dock and there'll be this whoosh of noodles into the air as the atmospheres don't quite match up on equalization, and you've got this hole in the wall thing that's planted onto your ship selling noodles.
So kind of like the noodle bar out of Fifth Element?
Actually, yes. Now that you
It's
mention
a
it,
flying
I hadn't thought of
noodle
that.
house that's pulled up to his apartment windows.
Yeah.
I hadn't thought of that.
Or the one out of Blade Runner.
You see them occasionally in various anime where you've got a 4-seat ramen stall. You pull up a seat, you eat your ramen, you pay the money, you get off so that someone else can eat.
Yeah. Or the a science fictional equivalent of the peddlers paddling out to the steamer furiously so they can flog their wares.
Well, that was what was happening on that Gordon Ramsay show,
Okay, yeah.
was that you had him studying at the knees of this tiny little Vietnamese woman in a boat, and she's making the soup in a boat.
While paddling through the harbour yelling, well, actually getting him to yell.
Getting him to yell an anglicised equivalent to "get your noodles here," and meanwhile the guy who's translating for him and the little old lady are cackling, so I have no idea what he was actually saying. Laughing their bottoms off. But people were still buying nodules, so...
Yeah, and there were other boats doing the same thing, so that you've got people kind of coming into port to sell them things, and you got, yeah, okay, noodles, and then...
Floating food court wars could get really quite exciting.
Is anybody else imagining Waterworld, or is it just me?
Not anymore. So yeah, that was my idea. Who's next?
My idea was possibly even less thought out than most of mine have been so far, but it may not work so well as a game so much as a setting for something, but just the idea of it all started when one of the stalls in the food court hired a superhero.
To do what?
Sell noodles.
Super speed busboy.
It could do sign spinning guy.
Just something, you know,
He
it's just...
lasted about 2 days doing that because nobody could read the sodding sign.
Yeah, you know, it starts where somebody picks up a high-speed waiter.
Okay.
And then the entire rest of the detail of the game that I have boils down to the phrase, well, that escalated quickly.
Fair enough. It implies that superheroes have nothing better to do, that they've either become so linked with shame and unemployment that that's the best they could find.
Well, if superpowers are very widely spread, well, no one's going to employ a teenage superhero, even if he is a track star.
Yep.
So, well, not unless he can also prove accuracy. So you've got that.
Kind of what I was thinking. If this is a new enough thing that there are very specialised purposes that they've been turned to, and you've got some people who technically have these abilities but just not enough to make the grade or something, and then you've got...
Okay, now I'm imagining somebody employing a kid with laser vision to cut stuff off a rotisserie.
Yes.
And they managed to get jobs that are themed to their powers. So there's Freeze Kid working at the gelato place.
And that escalated quickly! And you have this arms race, because, you know, you've got the kid with the laser vision who can technically cut things off a rotisserie, except then what happens when the restaurant decides that somebody else is stealing their thunder, so they want them to do that kind of cooking where the chef cooks things at the table, and you're thinking, I fire lasers, this is a really bad idea. Get out there and cook!
Have I mentioned my astigmatism? I don't care, get out there!
Yeah, and so basically, this is why I'm not sure, the eternal question of what do you do in this game, it pretty much boils down to try to survive with as little physical harm coming to you and yours as possible, because the managers of these places are all horribly unreasonable and don't know what they're doing. They're just certain that other people are stealing their thunder right now. Go out there and be flashy.
So this is Bulldogs, but without having to go anywhere.
And it may not be as sensible as Bulldogs. I kind of like the idea that the PCs are actually the entirely normal staff of this food court who are trying not to die. And
Trying to work around the new super the boss employed. Okay.
No, I think this seems like an excellent. What's the phrase? This is an excellent opportunity to go gonzo.
This has beer and pretzels written all over it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we've already got a name for the campaign or the game.
Food courts.
That escalated quickly.
I'm a big fan of Gonzo. I live on Gonzo on a fairly regular basis. It's just that sometimes you can emphasise the Gonzo by having people who have to live on its surface, and Ben has run away.
I think he is answering his work phone.
I'll answer it for you.
You may be on call right now. Are you on call right now?
No, cicada.
Oh, right.
On your leg? Or?
No, it was like on one of the pungers, slightly halfway down the drive, but it was still completely audible to me.
Fair enough. I don't notice the little things anymore. Out there just being sexy.
Yes, and loud.
Really sexy.
It was weird the other night where in the middle of the day there was a cricket out the back who the sun came out from behind a cloud and all the cicadas went la, and the cricket went fuck off. And it was chirp chirp silence. It was very shut up. I'm trying to sleep. Either that or it was very briefly waking from a dream of being a cicada file.
But yeah, you can go Gonzo with this in a large number of directions. So, I mean, it would basically be either PCs as mundanes and trying to survive a series of environmental hazards produced by everything else.
Or you are a teen environmental hazard who's just been hired.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This has sort of a Misfits feel to it, somewhat.
Or no heroics.
Or no heroics.
Yeah.
Closer to no heroics, I think.
Yeah, because they are completely crap.
Yeah. You can do one thing and not particularly well.
Or, you are a teenage kid who's really fast. Have you any experience as a waiter? No. So you're going to make more mistakes in the same amount of time than everybody else. Well done.
Or the laser vision kid with cross-eyed who normally works at the Doner Kebab store.
I kind of like the idea of he's brought this careful setup that he can cut through the rotisserie thing without, going through the wall or anything else. And it's basically trying to point out to the manager, okay, you realise the lasers don't stop when they cut the meat, right?
Too many details!
Stop skiving, get out there.
Here's a hibachi, go to the table.
Yes. Getting damage, somebody from the floor below. Where's Squiggly Smooch?
I cannot decide whether... I don't know, would you go with a very simple system?
Yes.
Teenagers from out of...
Yes.
Okay. So you wouldn't, for example, go, say, wild talents or godlike to increase the hilarity coefficient of, okay, and I make my burning things roll. Oh, God, I have never seen so many ones in my life.
I'm not sure.
I think I can see the benefit of it. It's just the time taken in character gen. I think the 0 to Gonzo shenanigans style would be rather longer for that, I think.
Good point.
That and the more numbers you add to a system, the more seriously players tend to take it. Well, I do.
Good point.
It depends what the mechanics of driving. If the mechanics are driving, like, extreme simulationist accuracy, yep, absolutely. If the mechanics are driving crazy stuff happens now...
Okay. What system can you think of with lots and lots of numbers in that drives crazy stuff? I'm just looking for a benchmark.
Not ones I've played enough yet to discuss completely.
Okay.
If you brought in the TFOS mechanic of succeeding more than a certain amount causes negative consequences, or at least unintended, possibly negative consequences, that could go well, because then little spotty Cyclops at the kebab place who's out trying his best to do the cooking at the table thing, he could roll really badly, blow a hole through the hibachi and the table and the floor, and hit a gas main or a water main. He could do it beautifully.
Comedy value on the waterman, so...
Yeah. Or he could do it too well.
And it turns out he's serving a restaurant critic who wasn't even on today, but writes this glowing report. And then suddenly there are hoity-toity people showing up in their diamonds and pearls, wanting to sit in their corner of the food court, and he doesn't know how to cook.
Indeed, and all of the other groups are getting insanely jealous. Or they're trying to get their own version of the cooking at the table, because, if they do the thing of missing why this place is suddenly so cool and thinking, okay, it must be the cooking at the table. It can't be the kid firing lasers from his eyes, that's boring. Who would care about that? We have a waiter who moves so fast they can't see him. Clearly it's the cooking at the table thing. Okay, we'll do that too, but we'll have a high-speed cook at the table. The whole meal will assemble itself before their eyes and they'll never see the chef.
Okay.
And then somebody ends up with a rasher of bacon shoved up their nose because he tripped on a rat because...
Or alternatively, the review is utter mediocrity at incredible speed.
Creepiest teppanyaki ever.
Or sushi that just assembles itself on the plate in front of you.
Yes, sushi appears, finger appears, finger disappears, plate is marked, more sushi appears, band-aid appears, band-aid goes.
I'm suddenly imagining what happens at the gelato stand. How much colder do you want your ice cream? Cup of milk. It's cold, ain't it? Okay, I'm kind of imagining her as kind of Daria.
I'm wondering how far you need to chill gelato before it starts to display strange quantum properties. Sort of a little coned off area, and physicists saying, well, look, as near as we can tell, he chilled down the entire freezer until it became a Bose-Einstein condensate. And then the wormhole opened.
Little pucks of strawberry gelato float to you in midair until their heat increases enough that gravity starts to apply.
Well, just the terrible problem of stock taking when something is cold enough that light is slowing down around it and you can't actually tell what's there anymore. Well, get in there and check. You get in there and check.
Yeah, I'm not going in near the freezer. It growled at me.
So yeah, this would be good for High Sky, the after-school jobs issue.
Oh, God,
I want to play in this game.
Yeah.
I realise that it's not going to come till after the other 14 games we know you're running, but...
Well, you say I'm running 14 games. I'm not. That's the problem. That's why there's 14 of them.
So that, I suppose, leaves Ben.
It does! Look who's on the spot.
Yeah, how about that?
Look at him, sitting there like a little Rory Kelvin. That was weird.
I had a few ideas I'm not terribly impressed with. Something along the lines of a reality TV show set in a food court.
Mm-hmm.
The idea that that really didn't get very far, unfortunately. I've been hearing a little bit about Inspectors, which sounds like a pretty cool game, which has a kind of basis of being a Ghostbusters franchise. And one of the game mechanics is that every once in a while, a player is taken aside and does a confessional section to the camera. And they basically narrate something that's about to happen in the story. And the players...
It's a cool mechanic.
Yeah. I started trying to think about ways of using a food court setting as part of the mechanics of a game. I had a really dumb idea about trying to work out what you're using the nutritional information about food court food as some sort of statistical thing.
Oh, awesome!
I don't know how you would get such damned and strange information out of the world, but yes, somehow making it. I don't know, maybe it's a bit like the various zombie burger games and the cheap-ass games with the zombie burger and so forth.
Oh, Fridays.
Yeah.
Actually, there was a game that Craig ran where he told us to assign values to stats that we didn't know what they did, and he kind of changed the name of them afterwards. I think it was something like PC load letter.
Yeah, it was office worker.
Yeah.
There was human relations. There was PC load. There were a few things.
I think there were 6 of them. Anyway.
Yeah, the shtick was that they were.
We only knew what they did if we were in the building.
Yeah, the people were basically super spies, and so I think human relations was firearms. PC load letter was hacking or something like that. It was a bit silly.
Yeah, so you could kind of make up pre-gens by going and getting the dietary information sheets from various family restaurants, let's call them that, and figure out what kind of categories you've got, see what you could assign to.
So your percentage of recommended daily intakes.
Yeah.
So if you have a percentile system, then you've got a
really
character sheet. Even if it doesn't match up with an actual food, if you've got a percentile system, so the character has 105% of their IDI for something.
Salt.
Yeah, salt. Yeah, lard.
Not sure the best way to apply that. The other thing is possibly use maps of existing food courts as kind of a territory thing.
Okay.
Or something.
Easy enough to do.
Yeah.
They often publish those things online these days, so you can scroll those away. So it's more of a jumble of things that food courts as a concept made me think of, but yeah. Nothing
coalesced.
Nothing really coalesced.
Yeah.
I was just thinking about the things, having seen an episode of, I think it's Celebrity Ghost Hunt or something. The idea of either, if you wanted to go back to the inspectors thing of Celebrity Ghost Hunt in a food court.
That would be hilarious.
Whether it's a haunted food court or, after hours or during the thing. Or alternatively, it's like Celebrity Apprentice or whatever. So you're basically playing D or E or F list celebrities.
People who were on the shopping channel once.
Yeah. People who were in fact more obscure and not heard of than random guy on the street. Working in a food court. Because then you can do the aside to cameras and...
It seems like doing a sort of a bitchy reality TV show in a place as demeaning as a food court is. It would be kind of soul-crushing, but maybe amusing.
I'm imagining people using the piece to camera as essentially a way of setting up other players. So, the whole thing of, well, things were going really well. And then I looked over and noticed that the manager of the surf and turf across the way had just grabbed Trixie's ass. Cut to...
Trixie.
Yeah,
obviously.
Trixie presumably turning and hitting the manager of the surf and turf with a heavy cast iron fry pan.
Getting herself fired and then arrested.
Yeah.
I was rescuing a rogue octopus. I wish to apologise in advance because the whole celebrity ghost hunter thing did cross over two of the ideas we've talked about in my head of basically having celebrities being run through a haunted food court, haunted by the ghosts of a bunch of people after an event went horribly wrong due to superpowered
There's a beautifully circular progression there, isn't there? Okay, I might have to buy inspectors off the internet and see if we...
You should.
Because it sounds like it sounds like a cool game, and something that will go in between our other activities.
Indeed.
Indeed.
There was one that occurred when chatting with Tonya on, I think, a drive back from your new place, Ben. Sort of kicking...
Thank you for telling us where that was, by the way. We would have abandoned you on the street outside your old place. Yeah.
So really, it was a win-win.
Yeah.
It was the notion of using something like Fiasco, or in fact, using Fiasco to do something set in a food court, based on just the cavalcade of small, logical steps. So I'm thinking here of riffing on things like the movie Death in Brunswick, or the Barney Thompson trilogy. I'll try to find links to bung those in the show notes. But yes, the idea of, you've got a food court. There's a certain amount of friendly competition between the various stores, and then health inspector courts. Maybe something goes wrong, and maybe the game starts with somebody standing over the body of the health inspector who's tripped on a rat or a pile of cockroaches and drowned in a grease trap or something like that.
Okay, so he wasn't actually murdered.
Maybe he was.
Unlike
Maybe
what...
he wasn't. Maybe that's just how it was found.
But it looks really
But it looks bad. And then it's just the continual spiraling out of control of, well, we can't get the body out immediately. Okay, I'll have to hide it in one of the lockers.
It won't
But there's
fit.
not enough room. I'll have to hide it in multiple lockers. And then various store managers, the guy at the chicken hut finds 2 legs and a head, and of the wrong species in the freezer. There's a torso over at the kebab hut. And the whole thing just spirals out of control.
Yeah, that could get,
There's a torso at the kebab hut,
Unseemly.
and the guy at the kebab hut thinks, eh.
It's like, well, it's going to be a pain in the ass to bone, but hey, why couldn't I have got a leg? Hey, I'll swap your torso for 2 legs. Yeah,
yikes.
here at the Tasty Ghoul food court.
You know, if we wanted to embrace Gonzo but go in a much darker direction, the whole superpowered food court through the Fiasco lens would be horrible.
So what you're saying is I should get myself a copy of Fiasco.
I'm not sure if Fiasco's quite the right system for this, because I thought Fiasco was a GM-less system.
Probably.
I think so, yeah.
And this sounds far more like it might lend itself to a silly system, but I think it might need a GM.
You need somebody throwing the bricks.
Yeah.
I think the point of Fiasco is that you throw the bricks at yourselves quite a lot. So
Oh, okay. I don't know enough about the system, really.
We
We'll
should-
see what it does.
We should do basic research at some point.
It doesn't sound like
Well, people are making the I'm done gesture, so I guess we're done. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time we have an idea.
Alright, bye.
see ya.
Bye.
Bye.
Next time on the Big Red Couch.
Arr! Here we be, becalmed upon this desolate siding.
I was not looking forward to that one.
Hi everybody, we've got a new section for the Big Red Couch this week because someone actually contacted us after listening to the show. Dun dun dun! And they wanted to talk to us about a product that they were promoting that they thought we might be interested in, and we really were. It's called Storyteller Cards from a guy called Jason Tagmeyer, whose name I'm probably mispronouncing. And it's on Kickstarter at the moment. You can find it, like I did, by doing a web search for Storyteller Cards Kickstarter. And the basic idea is that it's a whole deck of cards that is designed to inspire creativity for anything, whether it's RPGs or writing or working with kids or anything else. The Kickstarter explains it better than I do. And they all have images and circumstances on them that can spark ideas. I think my favourite card is the one with the boxer reading a treasure map in a library and screaming inexplicably, because that just makes me laugh. And it dovetails nicely with the Big Red Couch's whole principle of random concepts from the mystery box that you can use to spark off anything. We love the idea. We thought you might as well. The other thing that happened this week that was of interest is that another podcast called the Gutter Skypes discussed us due to being contacted themselves by a listener called Bob H from Australia. So, hi Bob! Hi Gutter Skypes! And, people are actually listening to the show. Some of us are now mired in existential terror as a result of this, and our listener gets everywhere. Very, very highly skilled person. So that wraps up a section we might do more often as interesting things happen or people talk to us. We'll be linking to Storyteller Cards and the Gutter Skypes in the show notes. Thanks for listening to The Big Red Couch. See you next time.
Want to hear more of our shenanigans? Then go to hoarde.net and click on the button that looks like a couch. The Big Red Couch is released under Attribution, Non-Commercial, Share-alike 3.0 Unported from CreativeCommons.org. All music on the show comes from the album Universal Fluff Theory by Krakatoa. Visit them at krakatoa.com or follow the link from our page. See you next time!